Ethan Vance stepped off the transport shuttle onto the gleaming platform of Zyphora's capital city. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of exotic flowers and ozone from the hovering vehicles above. Towering crystalline spires caught the sunlight, casting prismatic reflections on the smooth streets below. He adjusted the strap of his satchel, trying to hide the flutter of nerves that always came before meeting royalty. Not that anyone would suspect it, of course. Ethan had built a reputation as a simple trader, one who dealt in rare minerals and artifacts from distant star systems. Ordinary, quiet, and unremarkable. That was exactly the impression he wanted. Princess Lyra was waiting at the top of the grand staircase, her robes flowing like liquid light. Her eyes, a luminous shade of violet, studied him with polite curiosity. She had known Ethan as a charming, clever trader for years, but only recently had their friendship turned into something deeper. She wondered, not for the first time, whether she had misjudged him. He looked ordinary, almost fragile compared to the tall, imposing Zyphoran courtiers who surrounded her. Yet there was a calm certainty in his posture, a quiet energy that made her stomach twist in both worry and fascination. The ceremony was simple but elegant. The council of elders and advisors observed quietly, nodding at one another as Ethan stepped forward. He performed each ritual with careful attention, his hands steady, his voice clear. To everyone present, he was merely a human, a harmless figure of novelty and amusement. Yet beneath his composed exterior, Ethan's mind was already calculating. The palace's security routes, the patrol schedules, even the position of the guards relative to the sun and the reflective spires, all these details were etched into his memory with a precision no one could notice. When the ceremony ended, the guests dispersed to the reception hall, leaving Ethan and Lyra alone for a brief moment. She offered him a small smile. "You handled that well," she said softly. Ethan returned her smile, modest but warm. "I have had good teachers," he replied. His eyes flicked to the ornate walls, the patterns etched into metal plates and crystal inlays. "An excellent company. They do not take you seriously." "The Drathians." Lyra's hand gripped the railing of the staircase. "How close?" she asked, her voice steady but tense. "Too close to ignore," the messenger replied. "They have ships capable of sublight jumps. They could reach our border within hours if they intend to strike." He studied the sun's angle and the reflection from the spires. Every detail could be used to turn the tide if the Drathians attacked. To anyone else, he seemed to be simply observing the city with curiosity, but in truth, he was forming strategies in seconds. "You should gather the council," Lyra said, her voice low. "We need to discuss our options. But first, I would like a moment to review the palace defenses. Permission." In the grand corridors, he noted the placement of defensive turrets, the thickness of the walls, and the flow of energy to the shield generators. A casual observer would think he was simply admiring the architecture. Only Ethan saw it differently. Every surface, every device, every angle was a potential advantage, or liability. By the time he returned to Lyra, his mind was already forming a plan. The council had gathered, and the room was tense, filled with beings whose forms ranged from sleek and humanoid to more exotic shapes with multiple limbs and luminescent skin. The elders argued heatedly. Some suggested immediate diplomacy, offering tribute to avoid bloodshed. Others insisted on mobilizing the fleet and preparing for battle. Ethan listened quietly, nodding here and there, letting the arguments unfold. When it was his turn to speak, his voice was calm and precise. "Both options have risks," he began. "Diplomacy can buy time, but it cannot guarantee peace. Defense is necessary, but only if executed with foresight and ingenuity. We can combine the two." "How?" asked one of the elder advisors, an imposing figure with crystalline eyes. "We deploy a small delegation to negotiate, presenting ourselves as cooperative," Ethan explained. "Meanwhile, we prepare hidden defenses, using the palace itself as a force multiplier. If the Drathians strike, They will face obstacles they do not anticipate. It will be a small party, and I will ensure our position remains secure." As preparations began, Ethan studied the delegation's ships, noting modifications that could improve speed and maneuverability. He examined communications protocols, energy shields, and escape mechanisms. Everything could be optimized, and he would do it quietly, without drawing attention. That evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace terraces, Ethan and Lyra walked together through the gardens. The air was cool and fragrant, filled with the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. "You are very different from the man I thought I married," Lyra said, her voice tinged with wonder. "Quiet, yes. Ordinary, yes. But also prepared, aware, almost dangerous." Perhaps she had underestimated him. Perhaps she had misunderstood what made a human valuable in a galaxy of seemingly invincible species. Humans were often dismissed for their lack of advanced technology or raw power. But Ethan had shown her that intelligence, creativity, and courage were strengths that could not be measured by machines or numbers alone. The next morning, the delegation prepared to depart. Ethan boarded the sleek transport, his movements deliberate and calm. The Drathian fleet had not yet revealed its full strength, but intelligence reports indicated that the situation could deteriorate rapidly. He carried only essential equipment, relying on wit, observation, and strategy as his greatest weapons. Princess Lyra stood on the observation deck, her violet eyes tracking the shuttle as it lifted into the sky. She felt a strange mix of pride and worry. In him, she had found someone ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in substance. Someone who could face the unknown with steady hands and an unshakable mind. As the shuttle disappeared into the horizon, Ethan's mind was already at work. He calculated trajectories, analyzed potential threats, and anticipated the Drathians' moves. Every decision, every action, every tiny detail could mean the difference between life and death, not just for him but for an entire world. To the people of Zyphora, he was a common man, a human of no particular consequence. But Ethan Vance knew that appearances were deceiving. And soon, the galaxy would discover that the ordinary could become extraordinary, that ingenuity could triumph over might, and that a single human could change the course of history. As the stars stretched into lines outside the shuttle's viewport, Ethan drew a deep breath. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and trials unlike any he had faced. Yet he felt no fear. Only focus, resolve, and a quiet determination that humans carried within them. The ability to adapt, to overcome, and to endure. And when the time came, the blade he had not yet drawn would show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The Drathian fleet loomed on the edge of Zyphora's star system like a dark storm on the horizon. Scouts sent from the capital returned with reports that chilled the council. Hundreds of ships, each bristling with weapons capable of destroying cities in minutes. The sky over Zyphora shimmered faintly as if sensing the tension. Inside the palace, the council debated feverishly, their voices sharp with fear and anger. Ethan Vance had returned from his initial reconnaissance and stood quietly near the council's central table. He listened, as always, before speaking. To anyone watching, he seemed calm, almost detached like a man observing a children's game. But inside, his mind was calculating, analyzing every report, every potential threat, every weakness in the Drathians' approach. The council argued over surrender, tribute, and battle strategies. Some urged immediate negotiation, fearing that any delay would be interpreted as weakness. Others wanted to rally the fleet and meet the enemy head-on. The debate was loud, chaotic, and unproductive. Ethan raised his hand slightly, not to demand attention but to indicate he had something to say. The room quieted. "We cannot rely on fear or tradition alone," he said. His voice was steady, even, but carried an authority that made the council stop and listen. "The Drathians expect us to follow predictable patterns. They expect us to react with panic or compliance. We can use that expectation against them." Do you have a plan? His words were precise, but what impressed her most was his clarity of thought. There was no hesitation, no doubt. The plan was bold, and boldness was rare in Xypheran culture, where caution was prized above all. The council reluctantly agreed. Ethan was to lead the delegation. They provided him with a small ship, equipped with communication devices and light defensive shields. But the real advantage would come from his own observations and ingenuity. As he prepared to depart, Ethan reviewed his resources. He studied the ship's systems, noting modifications that could improve speed and maneuverability. He examined communication channels, ensuring no interception could catch them off guard. He memorized maps of nearby asteroid fields and planetary defenses that could serve as ambush points. Every detail, no matter how small, could turn the tide. The shuttle lifted off smoothly, leaving the capital behind. Outside, the stars stretched into streaks as the ship jumped into sublight speed. Ethan spent the journey analyzing the Drathian fleet's formation and probable tactics. Reports indicated that the Drathians relied heavily on overwhelming force, assuming that other civilizations would crumble in fear. They valued brute strength over subtlety, making them predictable in certain situations. Ethan smiled faintly. Predictability was an advantage humans could exploit. When the delegation approached the Drathian fleet, tension filled the cabin. The ships ahead were massive, black and angular, with engines glowing faintly red. The Drathian command vessel loomed at the center, its presence commanding and menacing. Every scout in the fleet seemed alive with energy, as if sensing intruders before they arrived. Ethan activated the communication link and hailed the Drathian commander. His voice was calm, polite, and careful. "I am Ethan Vance of Xyphora. We wish to discuss terms of cooperation and peace. We wish only to negotiate for the safety of our planet and people." Ethan offered gestures of goodwill, carefully crafted phrases that sounded cooperative but revealed nothing of Xyphora's actual strength. The Drathians were suspicious, aggressive, and condescending, but Ethan remained composed, giving nothing away. Every word, every pause, every gesture was deliberate, designed to buy time and test their reactions. After hours of careful maneuvering, Ethan returned to Xyphora with reports. The Drathians had not committed to peace. In fact, they had indicated that any hesitation would be treated as defiance. Time was running out. Back on the planet, Ethan moved swiftly. Using his observations, he began coordinating the palace's defenses. He studied the city layout, identifying narrow streets and choke points, locations where the Drathians' numbers could work against them. He designed traps and barriers, ways to channel attackers into areas where their size and firepower would be less effective. Lyra watched as he moved among the engineers and soldiers, explaining ideas and strategies. His instructions were simple, clear, and effective. The Xyphorans were amazed at how quickly he adapted to their technology, turning it to his advantage. He suggested modifications to energy shields, created contingency plans for sudden attacks, and even improvised simple but effective weapons. "What are you doing differently from our generals?" Lyra asked quietly. Ethan smiled. "I observe patterns and anticipate reactions. I do not assume what will happen, I predict it. Humans rely on creativity and adaptation. We do not follow tradition blindly." The Drathian fleet advanced, testing Xyphora's outer defenses. Small skirmishes erupted on the outskirts of the planet. Ethan observed from the command center, monitoring both sides. He noticed how the Drathians relied on predictable maneuvers, how their attacks often left gaps, and how their commanders expected resistance to break in fear. Ethan directed small units to exploit these weaknesses. Using decoys and misdirection, they led Drathian ships into ambush zones prepared earlier. Energy shields were redirected to trap enemy fire, and weapons were positioned where they could maximize impact without risking civilians. Each move was calculated, precise, and effective. The Drathians were confused. They had anticipated an easy conquest, a simple display of power. Instead, they encountered resistance they had not expected. Their strikes were less coordinated, their morale began to falter. Zyphora's defenders, inspired by Ethan's leadership, fought with courage and unity. Even those who had doubted him now followed his instructions without question. Lyra observed from above, heart pounding. Ethan, the man she had thought ordinary, was orchestrating a defense that made the Drathians hesitate. His calm under pressure, his ability to predict enemy actions, and his ingenuity were more impressive than any weapon the palace possessed. At night, the city's skyline glowed with energy shields and defensive lights. Ethan moved through the command center, checking systems and issuing orders. Every action was deliberate, every choice informed by observation and careful thought. He encouraged the Zyphoran soldiers to trust their instincts, to adapt as humans would, to think creatively rather than rely solely on technology. Small victories mounted. Enemy ships were disabled or forced to retreat. Civilians were evacuated efficiently, and the Drathians' advances slowed. For the first time, the invaders realized that defeating Zyphora would require more than brute force. It would require understanding, strategy, and adaptability, qualities humans excelled at in ways the Drathians could not predict. By the end of the second day, the Drathian fleet withdrew temporarily, regrouping to reconsider their approach. Zyphora's defenders had held their ground. The palace buzzed with cautious relief. The council, once skeptical of Ethan, now regarded him with awe and respect. Lyra felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Ethan, however, did not celebrate. He studied the battlefield reports, noting weaknesses that still existed, gaps that could be exploited by the enemy if they returned stronger. He understood that this was only a temporary reprieve. The real challenge had yet to come. Lyra approached him quietly. "You have changed everything," she said softly. "I never realized how powerful humans could be, not with weapons but with thought, courage, and creativity. That is why we endure when others fall." Every strategy, every defensive measure, every observation counted. The Drathians would return, but this time, Zyphora would not simply react. They would fight with intelligence, courage, and adaptability, the human way. And in the heart of the palace, Princess Lyra realized that the man she had thought ordinary was, in truth, extraordinary. The Drathian fleet returned, larger and more aggressive than before. From the palace walls, Zyphora's defenders could see the black ships forming in tight formation, their engines glowing ominously as they dropped into the planet's upper atmosphere. The warning alarms rang through the capital, a mechanical chorus that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest soldiers. Ethan Vance stood at the command center, surveying the battlefield through a series of hollow displays. Every ship, every movement, every signal was mapped and analyzed in his mind with exacting precision. The humans' previous success had bought time, but it had also revealed that the Drathians underestimated them no longer. They would strike harder, faster, and with more cunning. Lyra approached, her violet eyes sharp with concern. "They have returned in greater numbers. Can we hold them?" "We will show neither. Use the south turrets to create a funnel. Focus on their smaller attack ships first," he ordered. His voice carried authority, yet calmness. Every command was concise, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize hesitation. The defenders followed his guidance. To the Drathians' surprise, their initial strike was met with not chaos but coordinated resistance. Ethan had prepared traps in advance, explosive barriers hidden within the city streets, energy nets disguised as power conduits, and decoy ships designed to lure enemy fighters into ambushes. From above, the Drathian commanders observed the unexpected effectiveness of Zyphora's response. "These humans think differently," one hissed. "They anticipate our actions in ways we did not expect. Adjust our attack patterns, crush them quickly." By breaking those patterns, he could force confusion and hesitation. The battle escalated. Drathian ships attempted to breach the inner city, but each movement played into Ethan's carefully crafted strategies. Narrow streets became killing zones where their firepower was neutralized. Energy barriers redirected blasts back toward attacking fighters. Xyphoran defenders, inspired by Ethan's calm and precise leadership, fought with renewed determination, their fear replaced with purpose. At the palace gates, a squad of elite Drathian warriors attempted to infiltrate the royal grounds. They moved with speed and precision, confident in their superiority. Ethan had anticipated this, however. As the warriors approached, hidden traps deployed. Energy nets entangled their ships, forcing them into slow descents where defenders could engage them more safely. Ethan moved forward personally, slipping through the chaos with quiet determination. He carried no large weapon, only a blade designed for precision and agility. His human instincts and adaptability gave him an advantage in close quarters, where the Drathians relied on raw strength and predictable strikes. In the first confrontation, a Drathian warrior lunged, its blade a deadly arc of energy. Ethan sidestepped smoothly, using the momentum against the attacker and disarming him with a swift, precise movement. Another warrior came from behind, and Ethan pivoted, turning what could have been a surprise attack into an opportunity to neutralize both enemies in seconds. Each move was deliberate, efficient, and precise. Lyra, observing from the palace balcony, could hardly believe her eyes. The man she had thought ordinary was a whirlwind of skill and strategy. His calmness amidst chaos, his ability to adapt to unpredictable threats, and his courage inspired not only her but all the soldiers watching. The battle raged across the city. Ethan coordinated units, leading small squads to exploit weaknesses in the Drathian formations. They used human ingenuity to repurpose existing tools. Energy shields became mobile barricades, cargo crates turned into launch platforms for countermeasures, and even the city's natural terrain was utilized to create obstacles. Every action was clever, unexpected, and effective. The Drathians had underestimated humans. Their strategy relied on fear and overwhelming force, assuming that their opponents would collapse under pressure. Instead, they encountered resistance that was intelligent, adaptable, and relentless. Every move they made was anticipated and countered. As the hours passed, Xyphora's defenders gained ground. Drathian ships were destroyed or forced to retreat, their formation disrupted by unexpected tactics. Civilians were evacuated efficiently, their paths cleared and protected by temporary energy barriers and human-guided escort teams. The city's architecture, once considered purely ornamental, became a tactical advantage under Ethan's guidance. Lyra moved closer to the command center, watching him coordinate the battle. "How do you do it?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the sounds of conflict. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the displays. "I watch, I analyze, I predict. Humans survive by understanding patterns and finding solutions that others overlook. That is how we endure." The city bore scars of battle, damaged streets, flickering energy lines, and smoke rising from the outer districts. Yet Xyphora stood. Its defenders, guided by human ingenuity and courage, had turned the tide. Ethan did not allow celebration. He continued to monitor reports, noting enemy reinforcements gathering at a distance. He understood that the Drathians would not abandon their conquest easily. The true test was yet to come. Lyra approached him once more, her eyes reflecting both admiration and concern. "You have saved more lives than I thought possible. The Council is beginning to see it too. They are awed by you." "I do what is necessary. People often underestimate humans because we are small, unarmed, or seemingly ordinary. But our greatest weapon is our mind. Ingenuity, creativity, and courage. These cannot be measured in size or strength." Soldiers cleaned weapons, repaired defenses, and tended to the wounded. Ethan walked among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance. His presence alone inspired confidence. Lyra stayed by his side, silent for a while, then spoke. "Do you ever fear failure?" Observation, planning, and adaptability do. Humans have survived in countless environments, faced threats far greater than this, and endured. That is our nature. The preliminary engagements had revealed their tactics, and this next wave would be designed to counter any repetition of human strategy. Yet Ethan was ready. He had studied every lesson from the first encounter, prepared contingencies for every possible move, and adapted his plans to account for unpredictability. Every trap, every defensive position, every squad movement had been refined. Humans thrived where others relied on repetition. They used intelligence over brute force, creativity over rules, and courage over fear. Lyra watched him, understanding finally the truth she had glimpsed earlier. The man she had thought ordinary was extraordinary in every sense. Not because of strength, not because of weaponry, but because of the human mind, the ability to see, think, and act in ways no other species could predict. The Drathians, confident in their might, would soon discover that appearances could be deceiving. That one human, armed with knowledge, observation, and courage, could turn the tide of a war. That strategy, intelligence, and adaptability were weapons just as powerful as any fleet or weapon system. Ethan moved to the central control panel, scanning incoming enemy vectors. Every decision, every command, every calculation counted. He instructed squads to reposition, redirected shield power, and deployed surprise countermeasures. Each step was precise, each movement deliberate, each action building toward a greater plan. As the new wave of Drathians neared, the city braced itself. Soldiers followed Ethan's commands with unwavering focus. Civilians were guided to safety by clever diversions. And above it all, the human mind worked tirelessly, analyzing, adapting, and preparing for the moment when the Drathians would finally meet resistance they could not overcome. In the shadow of the approaching storm, Lyra whispered softly to herself, "The common man is no longer common at all." The Drathian fleet had retreated to the outer orbit of Zyphora, regrouping after their unexpected losses. Their ships hung in the void like dark predators circling a wounded prey. Inside the palace, the council convened urgently. Their previous confidence had been shattered by the humans' ingenuity, and now they looked to Ethan Vance for guidance. Ethan stood at the center of the council chamber, reviewing reports projected in holographic displays. His mind worked faster than the council could speak. Every Drathian maneuver, every pause in their retreat, and every pattern of attack he had observed in the previous battles was being analyzed and repurposed for the next engagement. Lyra approached him quietly, her violet eyes reflecting the faint glow of the holograms. "They have regrouped," she said softly. "Will they return stronger? They may have size and firepower, but we have adaptability, creativity, and strategy. That is more powerful than they expect." The idea was simple but daring. Strike at the Drathian fleet before they could reorganize fully, using the planet's terrain, Zyphora's technology, and human ingenuity as weapons. The council reacted with surprise and some apprehension. "You wish to attack?" one elder asked. "Do you not fear provoking them further?" "If we wait, they will attack when they are fully prepared. By striking now, we dictate the battle, forcing them to react to us. That is an advantage they will not anticipate." Energy shields were adjusted to allow temporary overloading, creating bursts of power at critical moments. Defensive systems were repurposed into offensive traps, while the city itself became a maze of potential ambush points. Ethan trained squads personally, focusing not only on combat skills but on improvisation and adaptability. He encouraged the Zyphorans to think like humans, to anticipate enemy reactions, to use the environment creatively, and to trust their instincts. Soldiers quickly realized that their previous training, though effective, was limited compared to the flexibility that Ethan demanded. Lyra watched the transformation in the palace troops and engineers. Fear had been replaced with determination. Confusion had been replaced with purpose, and admiration for the human who guided them was evident on every face. The first wave of Xiphoran strike ships launched, moving swiftly into the shadow of the Drathian fleet. Ethan himself piloted one of the ships, coordinating maneuvers with precision. They approached the enemy, using asteroid fields and energy anomalies as cover. When they were close enough, Ethan initiated the plan. Small, fast ships darted between Drathian vessels, creating confusion and forcing the enemy to divide attention. Energy traps previously set in orbit activated, damaging the Drathian ships and disrupting their formation. For every move the Drathians made, Ethan had anticipated a response, and his forces were ready. From the palace balcony, Lyra could see the battle unfolding in a spectacle of light and movement. Drathian ships exploded in bursts of energy, their formation broken by the sudden and unexpected offensive. Xiphoran ships, guided by Ethan's strategy, exploited every weakness, striking where the Drathians were least prepared. Ethan's movements were calculated yet intuitive. He adapted in real time, changing tactics as new threats emerged. A group of Drathian command ships attempted to flank the strike force, but Ethan anticipated their maneuver. He led a small squad through a narrow corridor between asteroids, appearing behind the enemy ships and attacking from an angle they did not expect. The Drathians were disoriented. Their previous reliance on overwhelming strength and predictable patterns was now a liability. Each human-led strike exploited these weaknesses, forcing them to react instead of act. Ethan's combination of foresight and adaptability created chaos in the enemy ranks, and their losses mounted rapidly. Meanwhile, back on the surface of Xiphora, the palace's hidden defenses continued to operate. Traps and barriers designed by Ethan disrupted enemy reinforcements attempting to reach the city. Xiphoran soldiers executed ambushes with precision, guided by the humans' principles of adaptability and observation. Every attack, every counter, and every maneuver was part of Ethan's larger plan. Lyra observed his calm focus and determination, feeling a mix of awe and relief. The man she had married, the one who seemed ordinary, was now orchestrating the planet's defense and offense with brilliance. It was not strength alone that mattered. It was intelligence, courage, and the ability to act unpredictably. As the battle raged, Ethan noticed a critical weakness in the Drathian command ship. Its shields were designed for frontal attacks, leaving its rear vulnerable. He devised a daring maneuver. A small human-led squad would approach from behind, bypassing the main fleet's attention. The squad moved with speed and precision, exploiting the gap. With coordinated attacks, they disabled key systems, causing the command ship to falter. The Drathian fleet wavered, their cohesion breaking under the relentless and unexpected tactics of the human-guided forces. They had not anticipated the clever use of terrain, traps, and improvisation. The strike demonstrated that the humans' greatest strength was not technology alone, but creativity, adaptability, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Ethan directed the Xiphoran ships to press the advantage. Small groups harassed the enemy's flanks, while others focused on disarming their weapons systems. Each move was deliberate, carefully calculated to maximize damage while minimizing risk to his own forces. The Drathians had become reactive rather than proactive, and that shift gave the humans control of the battlefield. On the palace balcony, Lyra felt the tension and hope in equal measure. The humans' ingenuity had turned the tide, but the battle was far from over. Ethan's calm leadership inspired everyone around him, from the council members to the youngest soldiers. Fear was replaced with strategy, hesitation with decisive action. As the battle reached its peak, Ethan took a personal risk. He led a strike team into the heart of the Drathian formation, targeting the remaining command vessels. Using agility, precision, and knowledge of enemy patterns, they disabled key ships, leaving the remaining fleet in disarray. The human-led forces had outsmarted the attackers at every turn, turning desperation into victory. By the time the Drathian fleet retreated into deep space, Xiphora had secured its skies. The planet was battered but intact. The defenders, guided by human ingenuity and courage, had overcome a seemingly superior force. Soldiers and engineers alike celebrated, though Ethan remained focused, ensuring that defenses remained strong and preparations continued. Lyra approached him as he reviewed the battle's outcome. "You have done more than anyone thought possible," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "You have saved Zyphora." His calm leadership, sharp mind, and ability to inspire others had changed their perception of humans entirely. The princess herself understood that the man she had married was far more extraordinary than appearances suggested. As night fell, the palace glowed with the quiet hum of energy shields and repaired systems. Soldiers rested while engineers prepared for future contingencies. Ethan moved among them, offering guidance, encouragement, and reassurance. Every detail, every observation, every instruction was part of a larger plan to ensure that Zyphora would not just survive, but thrive. Lyra watched him, understanding fully for the first time that human strength was not measured by physical power or advanced weapons. It was measured by intelligence, creativity, courage, and adaptability, the qualities that allowed humans to survive in countless environments against countless odds. Ethan's mind was already looking ahead. The Drathians would return with new strategies, but he had learned from every engagement. He would continue to innovate, adapt, and inspire. The humans' unpredictable ingenuity was their greatest weapon, and he intended to use it fully to protect Zyphora. As the twin suns rose again over the city, Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, looking toward the horizon. The humans' victory had been hard-earned, but it had proven a point. Even against superior forces, intelligence and courage could change the outcome. Zyphora was safe for now, and the galaxy had begun to learn that humans were not to be underestimated. And in the quiet moments before the next battle, Lyra realized that the man she had married, the one who seemed ordinary, was a force the galaxy had never seen before. The Drathian fleet loomed once more on Zyphora's horizon, larger and more ominous than ever before. Their ships were massive, bristling with weapons and shielded in layers of dark energy. This was the final assault, designed to crush the planet and capture Princess Lyra. Alarm sirens blared through the capital, but inside the palace there was calm. A calm born not of fear, but of preparation, intelligence, and determination. Ethan Vance stood at the command center, reviewing the data feeds from orbit and the planetary surface. His eyes scanned every detail: the position of the enemy ships, their likely attack vectors, and the timing of their approach. Each movement, each pattern was carefully noted. Humans thrived on unpredictability, and Ethan intended to show the Drathians exactly what that meant. Lyra approached, her violet eyes fixed on him. "This is the largest fleet they've ever sent. Are we ready?" They had seen what Ethan could do, how his careful observation and ingenuity had turned seemingly hopeless situations into victories. Now, they placed their faith fully in his guidance. Ethan activated the defense protocols. Zyphora's cities, fleets, and battlegrounds had been prepared meticulously. Energy barriers, traps, and ambush zones were all in place. But the key would not be the technology alone. It would be the humans' ability to think creatively and adapt in ways the Drathians could not anticipate. The first wave of Drathian ships descended, firing massive energy blasts toward the planet. The outer defenses absorbed the initial impact, but the sheer force of the attack was overwhelming. Ethan directed Zyphoran fleets to counter, but he knew that conventional tactics alone would not win this battle. This time, the humans would have to act unpredictably. He gathered his closest strike teams. "We will divide their attention," he instructed. "Small squads will attack their flanks, using speed and maneuverability. The main force will engage in feints to lure them into traps. Use your wits, observe, and adapt. Remember, they cannot predict humans." Explosions lit up the sky as ambushes were triggered. Traps hidden in orbit and planetary structures detonated at precise moments, disabling several enemy vessels. Drathian formations became chaotic as they tried to regroup, but every human-led move exploited their confusion. Ethan's mind was a storm of calculations. He directed strikes, repositioned forces, and anticipated enemy responses with astonishing accuracy. Each decision was deliberate, informed by careful observation and intuition. Every human action was designed to maximize effect while minimizing risk. Meanwhile, Lyra observed from the palace balcony. The battle was breathtaking. Enemy ships exploded in bursts of energy, flares lighting up the sky as the Drathians faltered against the unpredictable human strategies. Civilians were evacuated efficiently, guided by human intuition and creative problem-solving. Ethan noticed a critical weakness. The Drathian warlord's flagship had exposed command nodes due to repeated maneuvers. This was the moment he had anticipated. He rallied a strike team for a direct assault. Using speed, agility, and clever tactics, they approached the flagship undetected, navigating through debris and enemy fire. Inside the flagship, Ethan moved with calm precision. He avoided detection, neutralized guards efficiently, and made his way to the command core. Every movement was deliberate, every action designed to disable the ship without unnecessary confrontation. The Drathians had strength, but humans had creativity and adaptability, and that was more dangerous than brute force. Ethan reached the core, analyzing the control systems. With careful manipulation, he disabled the ship's shields, weapons, and communications. The warlord attempted to react, but Ethan anticipated every move, countering swiftly and decisively. Within moments, the flagship was neutralized and the remaining Drathian fleet, leaderless and disoriented, faltered. From the palace, Lyra saw the enemy formation break apart. Victory was within reach. The humans' ingenuity had turned the tide. The Drathians, for all their strength, could not predict the unorthodox strategies, the adaptability, and the courage that the humans displayed. Ethan directed the Xiphoran forces to press the advantage. Small squads harassed the enemy flanks, while others struck at weakened points. Energy traps activated in sequence, further disrupting the Drathians' coordination. The battle was a symphony of calculated chaos, orchestrated by the human mind. On the ground, soldiers followed Ethan's instructions flawlessly. They moved with purpose, using the environment creatively. Barricades became tactical tools, streets were transformed into channels for defense, and even civilian spaces were repurposed to mislead and contain the enemy. Every detail mattered, and Ethan ensured nothing was overlooked. Lyra watched him, awed and inspired. The man she had thought ordinary was orchestrating an entire planetary defense with intelligence, courage, and vision. His calm presence instilled confidence in every soldier and civilian. Every move reflected the human ability to adapt, to think beyond rules, and to turn adversity into opportunity. As the last Drathian ships retreated, Ethan did not celebrate. He ensured that all defenses remained active, that civilians were safe, and that the planet was prepared for any further threats. The battle was won, but vigilance was necessary. Humans endured by never underestimating the next challenge. Lyra approached him as he reviewed the final battle reports. "You've done what no one thought possible. You've saved Xiphora," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "I've helped, but the victory is not mine alone. It belongs to those who adapted, who acted with intelligence and courage." Humans survive by combining knowledge, creativity, and determination. That is what Xiphora has now shown the galaxy. Humans were not merely small, fragile beings. They were unpredictable, clever, and courageous, capable of turning impossible situations into triumphs. Lyra looked at him, understanding fully for the first time. The man she had married, the one who seemed ordinary, was extraordinary, not because of strength or weapons, but because of his mind, his ingenuity, and his courage. He had changed the fate of her planet and earned the respect of a species that once doubted him. The people of Xiphora celebrated quietly. Their homes were damaged, their skies scarred by energy blasts, but their planet was intact. Civilians emerged from shelters, and soldiers returned from the battlefield with stories of courage and cleverness that would be remembered for generations. Ethan walked among them, offering guidance and reassurance. His presence alone inspired hope. He encouraged the Xiphorans to rebuild, to learn from the experience, and to embrace the principles that had won them victory: observation, adaptability, and courage. Lyra joined him on the balcony, watching the twin suns rise over the recovering city. "You've shown me what humans are capable of," she said softly. "Strength, courage, intelligence, all in one." Ethan knew that challenges would come again. Yet he also knew that humans had something unique: the ability to see solutions where others saw none, to act with courage when others faltered, and to endure against overwhelming odds. That was a strength the Drathians, and any other species, could not predict. Lyra took his hand, understanding fully now that the man beside her was no ordinary trader. He was a hero, a strategist, and a protector, a testament to what humans could accomplish when underestimated, pushed, and challenged. Ethan looked out at the horizon, calm and resolute. The battle was over, but the lesson was clear. Intelligence, creativity, courage, and adaptability were the greatest weapons a human could wield. And in a galaxy that often dismissed humanity as small or weak, those qualities would ensure that humans endured and triumphed. As the twin suns bathed the city in golden light, Ethan and Lyra stood together, looking toward the future. Xiphora had survived, thanks to a human who seemed ordinary but had shown the extraordinary power of the human spirit. And in the quiet aftermath, one truth was undeniable: humanity, underestimated and dismissed by many, had once again proven its worth. Their ingenuity, courage, and adaptability could overcome even the greatest odds, leaving a mark on the galaxy that would not soon be forgotten.